30 seconds to introduce.
Thanks, Lascan. Well, Minister, as you know, of the 800,000 or so of our fellow citizens who live in poverty, something like 250,000 of them are children. And the question really refers to the Silk report, the EU Silk report, which we received recently. And as you know, the at-risk of poverty rate for one-parent families was up 4 points, I think, to 36%. The consistent poverty rate for this group, for lone-parent families, was up from 22 to 26%. And indeed, the deprivation rate was also highest for that group of families at 58%. So I'm just asking what is yourself and the Minister indeed beside you has a huge responsibility in this area. What are you planning to do if we still have your government later into 2017 and you can come up with a response to these really very disappointing and worrying figures? Thanks, Ken.
Okay. Thank you, Deputy Broughan. The reduction of children's poverty is a key political priority for the government. The Taoiseach has described tackling child poverty as a moral imperative, and I too believe that it is a vital issue that we must address robustly. In recognition of the higher risks and lifelong consequences of child poverty, the government set a child-specific poverty target in Better Outcomes, Brighter Futures to reduce consistent child poverty by at least 2/3 by 2020. This figure currently represents 102,000 children who needed to be lifted up from this threshold. The Department of Social Protection has the lead role in coordinating government strategies on child poverty and is adopting a cross-departmental approach. It also has lead responsibility for the National Action Plan for Social Inclusion and has identified child poverty as a key cross-sectoral priority to be addressed. Officials in my department are working closely with the Department of Social Protection in informing the development of this cross-sectoral priority. Officials in the Department of Social Protection have convened a subgroup with members of the Advisory Council of Better Outcomes, Brighter Futures to progress the solutions to child poverty. And in recognition of the fact that child poverty is a multifaceted problem, this group includes officials from other departments, including the Department of Health, the Department of Education and Skills. It's led by the Department of Social Protection. This group has produced a paper which outlines a whole of government approach to tackling child poverty. It's based around the 3 pillars outlined in the EU recommendations on investing in children: access to adequate resources, access to affordable quality services, and children's rights to participate. And that paper is going to come before the consortium of interdepartmental people working on this particular issue in the near future.
Deputy Broughan, for supplementary.
Thanks, Lascan. Minister, obviously, one of the areas yourself and your colleague there might have an influence on is the changes that were made to one-parent allowance in 2012. At the time, in the last government, I think many of us on this side of the House, we predicted that the changes would exacerbate, particularly the change at age 7, would exacerbate the rates of child poverty in this country, which seems to be clearly exemplified in the Silk report. So I just ask you, and I welcome the comment you made in relation to the interdepartmental group, is this whole area being considered with your colleague there, and it's something that you would look at again and look at the very most fundamental aspect of income, because very often, for example, with one-parent families who are in danger of homelessness, the issue of obviously of rents, savage rents comes up frequently, but also the difference that can happen to one-parent family, to the parents who are in part-time work and who at age 7, then when the child reaches age 7, you have a fundamental change. So is this a policy change that the austerity government's made, which you are now continuing, and that should be reversed?
Thank you. Deputy. May I say that in response to your questions there and your comments, what I'm trying to outline is that we are absolutely committed to a whole government approach in terms of reducing children's poverty, and that we understand that children's poverty is the ways in which addressing that have to do with, yes, access to adequate resources, which of course has to do with income, and that is specifically related to the statistics that you've identified, the income in terms of households and the ways in which those figures are changing. But that's not the only way in which we are addressing the issue of focusing on children's poverty. It is also access to affordable quality services, as well as children's right to participate. In the context of my own department, the access to quality affordable children services for children have to do with the affordable childcare scheme that I've heavily reinvested in. In relation to the particularly lone parents, there are a number of measures in the program for government that are directed towards that, but in relation to the issues that we're speaking about now, my colleague, the Minister for Social Protection, is working as we speak on a new initiative in terms of working family payments, with specifically focusing on the objective of reducing child poverty, as well as ensuring a greater access to employment, particularly with a focus on lone parents in that regard too. And that is where we hope to address some of the issues that you've identified.
That's okay.
Right.